trial attorney and analyst. It's great to have you here with us. Those jury deliberations wrapping up for the day. Can you take us inside the jury room? What can we expect is actually taking place there? What are those discussions like?
So this is the first time that the juries had the opportunity to discuss this case. Before then, they weren't supposed to discuss it. So prior to them going into the jury room, the judge read jury instructions for about an hour, basically laying out what certain factors that the judge told them, also explained to them on the law as well. And so some of the things that the judge told them was that they must decide this case based on the evidence that was presented to them. They can't hold anything against Trump for not testifying, and that the people must prove beyond a reasonable doubt every element of the crime.
It's a complex case. We saw many different pieces of evidence, some 22 different witnesses called during this trial. What do you think will be the key points that these jurors during these deliberations will focus in on?
The evidence. So what we know so far from the jury room, that of course they are discussing the case, that they have asked for certain evidence back. Now, all the jurors have with them is the evidence, the document evidence, but they do not have the jury instructions and they do not have the testimony. So what we've heard so far, that the jurors have asked for 4 separate parts of witness testimony, including the former National Enquirer David Pecker and Trump's former fixer Michael Cohen.
These deliberations will continue. It could be days, it could be weeks, it could be months. Do you have a sense of whether or not a longer deliberation by this jury is a good sign for Mr. Trump or a bad sign?
There's different schools of thought on this. The one school of thought is the fact that the longer that the jury deliberates, that there is 1, 2, or multiple people that don't agree with the majority. So that could potentially be a hung jury. Another school of thought is the fact that they're taking so long because, as you said, this is a very complex case. There are 34 counts in this case, so they are meticulously going through each one of the counts and the evidence to make sure that the evidence backs up the causes of action.
You mentioned one potential outcome here. That would be a hung jury. That would essentially be that the jury can't come to an agreement. Just remind us, what are the other potential outcomes here?
Sure. So one potential outcome is the jury convicts on all 34 crimes. Another one is the jury convicts, but not on all 34 of the counts. Now, potentially this could happen because some of the checks were signed by Trump and some of them were not. So they could come back and say, well, the ones that he signed, we're going to find him guilty on those counts, but on the other ones, we're not. Another possible outcome is that all 12 of them decide that the state did not prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt, and so then he would be not guilty. The last one would be a hung jury, that they've, after hours of deliberating, days after deliberating, and potentially the judge coming back and saying, try one more time, and they come back and say, Your Honor, we've tried, we can't agree, then at that point it would be a hung jury.
And briefly, just looking ahead, let's say that the jury does come back with a guilty verdict. I think a lot of our viewers would want to know what happens next. Would that mean that we see a former president of the U.S. actually in some sort of jail or prison?
If he is convicted, ultimately that will be up to the judge. Now, most likely, if he's convicted, since Trump is a first-time offender, that most likely he would not do jail time. So that potentially could happen.
Kelly Hyman, a trial lawyer, legal analyst, thank you so much for walking us through that. And we'll be watching as the second day of those deliberations takes place tomorrow. Thank you very much for your time.
Great to see you.